Well, folks, you know it's me, obviously. You've seen the channel. Well, maybe you haven't. Welcome. First time here, potentially. We're here on some wide open, untamed, natured land in Lubbock, Texas. And let me tell you guys something. We're about to shoot some doves, but before we do that, we're going to give you an exhaustive list of things that you need to know if you're thinking about moving to Lubbock and purchasing land. Lubbock's got a lot of land. We're not short of land at all. And I've brought in local, regional land expert, Mr. Corey Zan of Veritas Real Estate. We'll do this clap sound effect right here. Thank you. Corey is the land man. He sells a lot of land, and quite frankly, if you're interested in buying land, you call me, and then I'll probably kick you on over to this guy because he's a wizard. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, the very first point that you need to know before you know anything else when you're buying a piece of land, is the zoning and land use regulations. What kind of regulations there are, what you can and can't do with the land. So Corey might kind of expand upon that issue.
Yeah, it depends on where your land is. Generally, if you're outside of city limits, there's not a whole lot of zoning. You have pretty much unrestricted use of your land. If you're inside the city, it's definitely worth checking out what it's zoned for, residential, commercial, etc. So, but in general, in the South Plains, you get outside the city, just make sure it's got an ag use and that you can build on it, and that it can be repurposed for residential.
Yeah, because a lot of people might buy land and be like, oh, well, I want to put a water park there. Well, you can't do that because it's not zoned for commercial. I mean, that's a dumb example. So you want to make sure that whatever the regulation is for your land, that you can do what you want with it. Okay, number two, this one's big in Lubbock because it's a hot button issue, but let's talk about water rights and access. A lot of people think about if they're going to build a house somewhere, the first thing they need to think about, one of the first things is if they can drill a well. If it's on city water or they need to be drilling a well, how many gallons a minute they can get, all that jazz.
Yeah, it's something that if you're close to the city, you might check in to see if there's city water or even what they call rural water, meaning they have municipal water coming to you. That'll be metered. But if not, if you're in the middle of nowhere, it is very important, especially in the South Plains, that you will build where water is available.
Yeah.
Generally, if you have around 20 to 30 gallons a minute on a well, you'll be good for residential purposes. But you want to make sure that there is water because you do not want to build, and then you'd have to have a rain catchment system of some sort to provide. So.
And you don't want to be doing that. That's what they did back in the 1800s. We're not there anymore.
Yeah, so make sure that there is a water source under you, and you can do that. Test wells. Even like back over here, there's a pivot behind us that usually an indicator that water's kind of in the area, at least for residential.
Okay, number three is what's called a Perk test and soil quality, not Percocet. I don't know what Perk is. Corey's going to explain it.
Well, it's more about the permeability for your septic tanks. We don't really run to that issue. That's more for areas that have a heavy clay soil. In the South Plains in general, we have a sandy soil. There is one thing, very nice, that to consider when it comes to soil. You don't really want to build in where we have a lot of clay, usually because there are playas, and a playa is another word for a lake.
It's Spanish for beach.
Yeah.
Drink Modelo Especial. Okay, another thing, number four, to talk about is environmental restrictions and protected areas. You might want to know, you might want to shoot a groundhog in the face. You might want to throw a grenade down a groundhog hole or a prairie dog hole. You need to figure out if you can do that or not. I don't think you can do that with groundhogs anyway because they're protected, I believe.
Well, we don't really have groundhogs here. We have prairie dogs.
Yeah, excuse me. But just in general,
I want to shoot those cute little precious things.
I don't know, because you shoot them with a 50 caliber bullet and they explode.
They're
very invasive. It's like shooting pig, which you could do with a cannon if you wanted. But just considering all the restrictions that may be on the environment.
Well, just to add to that, we were just talking about playas. A lot of the playas actually are federal wetlands, and there sometimes has to be permission for you to do anything on them. Even, if you wanted to make it into a deeper tank, you would need to check that is considered a designated wetland. So I think that's probably about the only thing we run into. As far as endangered species, there are a few, like the prairie chicken and the sagebrush lizard, but I don't know. You're not going to really come across.
Yeah. But I mean, it's good to know just in general.
Yeah.
So you don't get in trouble down the road. Okay, number five. This one's really big. Access and easements. So if you don't know what an easement is, you probably shouldn't be buying land anyway. Just kidding. There's a first time for everything.
It's just you're traveling on someone else's land, but you have the right to get to yours.
Yeah.
It's the simplest way to put it.
And they're on a survey usually.
Well, it didn't have to be a survey. Some deeds will say there's a 1 acre strip for this long, but a lot of the times they are surveyed.
Okay.
It would be advisable to have that surveyed if you're getting one.
Right, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page about who can be crossing where, who can be doing what. I've talked to some folks that have had issues with that. I'm sure Corey's talked to billions that have had problems with easements in the past, but they can be contentious because some farmers can be like, I don't want you on my land, and then all sorts of trouble.
There might be a pipeline going through there, and there might be a company that has access to that, and it would behoove you to check that out if there's a pipeline, because you wouldn't want somebody just driving on your property and you didn't know about it, which would come up in your title work.
Yeah.
Electrical line easements also are other types of easements. But going back to access, I think it's really important to know what type of access you have in the soil. Like, for instance, this piece of land is a caliche road. Usually are pretty good. Over here, it gets sandy, and in the rain, that gets very muddy.
And you're going to get stuck.
And always consider that in values, too. If someone's asking a premium on paved, that makes more sense.
And that brings us into our next point about getting a survey. You probably really need a survey. And I know I just kind of mentioned that, but it's very important to make sure you know exactly the outline of your land.
Yeah, surveys are good. Really depends on how much acreage you're getting. I generally recommend them just to know where your boundaries sit. Sometimes a fence is always a property line, and you never know. If a neighbor's on your property, you would like to know exactly where your corners are, so when the surveyor comes out, they'll either identify the actual stakes that are there or put new ones if they're replatting.
And not like ribeye steaks.
No. That would be cool, though.
That would be awesome. They just come out and throw stakes at you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, and then they'll put little flags on it, so you'll know exactly where your property lines will lay when you get a survey.
Right.
And those will vary in cost depending on how big the land is and how much work they have to do, how much contour to the land there is, etc.
So another thing that we've talked about, kind of hitting, just knowing the laws and knowing what you're buying and what you're getting into. So probably like deed restrictions is an important thing to know.
Very important.
And what exactly do deed restrictions tell you?
Deed restrictions are basically just seller imposed rules for the buyer, and that might be for a number of reasons. Maybe they're splitting up their parcels and they want to give the confidence to the buyer that this isn't going to turn into a huge swine farm or trailer park. So they'll put certain rules that say, you can have the access to the land, it's yours, but there will be no
swine farm, trailer park,
like
water parks.
So it's always important to get those and make sure you agree with those and you would abide by them.
Yeah.
And deed restrictions aren't always bad because they can keep an area nice if you're around other neighbors.
Yep.
Now, if you're buying 640 acres, generally you don't want to see deed restrictions because you've got a lot of space between you.
Right, and you don't know what's going to happen.
But that never happens.
And are mineral rights in the deed restrictions?
No. Mineral rights, they will sometimes be found in your title work when you go to the title company, but not always. If mineral rights are important to you, it is important to hire a landman. We have contacts with good landmen. For instance, if you see oil wells around you and you think, I'd like to know how much the seller has and how much he's willing to convey, that'd be important to know.
I'd like to know how much that guy has.
And it's also important to know if the seller says how much of the minerals that they own is conveying. Sometimes they'll say 50% of seller-owned minerals, not 50% of all the minerals, because there could have been 20 owners before him that split it halfway.
Yeah.
You might be left with 1/64 of mineral rights or something like that.
So that's another really important thing. Ask, and that's why you want to get a guy who knows what he's doing, like Corey, who's going to be able to say, hey, these are the things, this is the checkbox that we need to make sure we're checking everything off of. And that'd be one of the main ones. Another thing is know your local market conditions. And of course, like I just said, shamelessly plugging this guy and myself, you're going to find that out from a professional. Usually a piece of land on one side of town might cost drastically less or more than a piece of land on another side of town. So you need to know the cost per acre on just the different parts of town that you're looking at. And they vary drastically. And a lot of people like to apply that, this costs this over here, so it should cost that over there. And no, that doesn't mean that. And maybe if something costed significantly less, it's because it was next to a swine farm or a water park. And so these are all things that you need to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about purchasing something. Are the local market conditions and what a piece of land is actually going for.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of things that factor into price per acre. I mean, there's a ton, and I can go on and on, but location's the biggest probably. Closer to town, the more expensive. Blacktop frontage, electricity, type of soil has been a big one. Water availability, whether your land is irrigated, not irrigated. Just, there's a lot of factors to it, really. So it is important to know, to talk to somebody, to know, because you do not want to overpay for a piece of property. You'll be in the hole equity-wise. You'll have to wait a few years.
You'll be in the hole. You'll be underwater. You'll be wherever.
Okay.
Nothing will be good. You'll be in a vat of acid. Just kidding. But it won't be good. So make sure that you know what you're buying when you're buying it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's probably exhaustive.
Let's shoot some dove.
Let's shoot some dove. Thanks for watching. We're going to shoot some dove and crack some cold ones. But thanks for watching. If you guys are interested in buying land, give me a call. I'll probably refer you to this guy unless it's like a massive amount of land. Then definitely call me and don't call him. But I'll probably have him help out anyways because he really knows what he's doing. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. We will see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Toodles.